Sometimes we're unsure how to address grief in our home, our own unresolved grief or our own stress and our own emotions. And that can really have an effect on our kiddos without us even really knowing that or recognizing it. For parents out there, whether you've lost a loved one or you've experienced trauma, or maybe you're just dealing with emotions from your past, I really believe it's essential to work through those emotions so that you're not unintentionally passing them down to your kiddos. Because I think even when we think that we're shielding our kids from our own grief or our stress, everyday stress, our emotional distress, kids have a sixth sense for knowing that, something's not right or mom and dad aren't okay. And so what can we do to help take care of our own selves and really deal with and overcome our grief and our emotional pain? And that is actually why you're here today, Jason. Hey there, parents. Thanks for listening to the No Problem Parenting Podcast. Are you ready to become the confident leader your kids crave you to be? Are you losing your crap on your kids, yelling, giving in, and exhausted at the end of every day? You can start building confidence in your parenting immediately, whether your child is a toddler or all grown up and still living in your house. Don't make this parenting gig harder than it needs to be. Register to become a No Problem Parent. It comes with an app so you can listen to the tips and tools just like you're listening to this podcast. Click the link in the show notes or go to noproblemparents.com. Become a No Problem Parent today. All right, Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki, you know the toll grief and loss can have on our physical and emotional well-being firsthand. When you were 20, your teenage sister Lauren had died in a car accident. And like so many people, you were told, oh, stay strong. And, after a little while, you can, you can move on. But grief does not work that way. Over time, you realized that grief isn't something that we just get over, that it actually lives in our body. And if we don't process it, it can unconsciously shape how we parent and how we communicate and how our children learn to handle their own emotions. So you ended up becoming a grief therapist, a somatic grief therapist. You're also a keynote speaker, and I encourage everybody to go listen to your keynote address that you have on your website. It is phenomenal. You're also a yoga teacher with a master's degree in psychology, and you help people move through grief.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me. Let's start with why parents need to do their own healing first and why that's so important.
Yeah. And I want to kind of just, even before we talk about that, I want to even stress that it doesn't matter what you do. Your kids are going to process it in their own unique way. So I know the more you, though, get in touch with the issues that you're dealing with, the easier it will be for the children, because they don't only just listen to what you're saying. They're watching what you're doing. And even before we hit the record button, Jackie, you were saying, people think that they're shielding their kids maybe from their emotional issues. But if you're holding back, the kids are watching that and they're learning their emotional intelligence from you. And so if you think that you're shielding them, then you may actually be walling them off from what they're feeling. And especially around grief. I know even in my own personal household, I have young nephews. We need to be very open and honest about what grief has and death, what that brings, because, shielding children from grief separates the death and the life. It makes it different. And this is the way we're conditioning our young kids to be afraid of death when it's actually just part of the life cycle. So that's really important, to make sure that you're getting a check on your own stuff so that you're not passing it off onto your kids.
Oh, I think that's awesome. And how do we do that is, I think, often the big question. You lost your teenage sister when you were 20 years old. And so talk a little bit about that, the impact that had on you and how it showed up in your life in ways you couldn't have even been prepared for or could expect.
Right. So going back to that conditioning, the conditioned response that happened. So for the first few years, I didn't even realize I was supposed to be dealing with my grief. It wasn't a thing, because everyone was telling me, not just, just from society in general, because we also not just get conditioned from our immediate family, but we get conditioned from society and the community and people around us, which is why it's important to make sure that we're being in community and sending these great messages to our young kids, because you're all being affected. So I would get these messages. You got to be strong for your parents. You're going to have to be tough. And so I'm an emotional mess. My sister just died. And if I showed my emotions to my parents, that's not being strong for them. That's causing them more pain. So for the first couple of years, I conditioned myself just to stuff everything down. And when you start to stuff things down, it has to come out some way. So I would start like kind of beating myself up, and I would start doing these things that weren't supporting my health and my growth. And it wasn't until I realized, oh crap, right? I have to deal with my grief first. And I always seem like it's like putting on an oxygen mask. When you're on the plane, the stewardess says, if in case of an emergency, the oxygen masks drop, you got to put it on yourself first before putting it on your children, right? And so that's what we're talking about, is putting your own oxygen mask on first and dealing with your stuff. Because if not, you're going to just pass that conditioning off to your kids, even with the best intentions. My parents are so loving and caring, and they also are scared of some stuff that I became scared of. They, turned me away from things that really would support me. So it's that's why it's important that you really deal with your own issues first. And it first starts with awareness. You have to realize what your issues are, because everyone's got different issues, right? Like everyone has different things that they're dealing with. So
I can imagine your parents at the time were not wanting you to stuff your grief, were not wanting, the messages you heard from other people about you need to be strong for your parents. I mean, they weren't asking for that, but how do you even know? It's like you want to protect your kids from your own grief or your own hurt, but you don't even really know as a parent what to do for yourself, much less for your child or young adults, right? So where do you start, or how, knowing what you know now?
Right.
What are maybe some of the subtle ways that parents might be unconsciously passing down their grief or stress? What are some things they can be aware of?
Right. So that's where I always come back into the body. Our body is always giving us those messages of what to do. And we so often don't get into our instinctual body. We inhibit those instincts. And so when our body reacts in a certain way, we have to start to listen in. So many people that are in grieving have a certain place that starts to act up. And it's funny because a lot of times it could be, and with some of my clients, it mirrors the death of their loved one. So I had a client that her sister passed of respiratory issues, and then she started to have some like kind of lung things going on. Another woman that her mom died of lower back thing, and she started to have lower back pain. So sometimes even our physical cells mirror what was going on with our loved one. So that's always a great place to start, is notice where your body is feeling dis-ease or discomfort. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And you're reminding me of when we met in New Jersey a few weeks ago. You said the issues are in the tissues.
Yes. Yeah.
And I loved that. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's helpful to even think about that. A lot of our emotions often are stored, in the body somewhere, right? And you talked a lot about the central nervous system.
I'm all about teaching tools, so let's go into a tool that's great, because I'm a big fan. I don't like to ever speak without giving someone like action to do, right? Because this information is so great, wonderful, but if you're not acting on it, then knowledge is only potential power. It's only when we take action do we really get the true benefits. So I'm going to go over a quick, I'm going to teach everyone how to breathe deeply, because that's a great way of just getting in contact with your central nervous system, what's going on in your body, and just getting a good feeling of where you start from, even on a physical level, right? So a good way to do that is bring one hand to your belly and a hand to your chest.
Oh my gosh, so you're speaking my language right now.
Right.
It's in step one of no problem parenting. I call it remember the pause.
Yeah, right. And what? Because we get so involved, especially as parents. Oh, I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I don't have like we all have the same amount of time. Energy can always be generated. Like we have to think of energy as generation. And if you're exhausted, right, it's because you need to generate more energy. How do you generate more energy? That's where all lifestyle stuff, that's where doTERRA comes into place. That's where healthy eating, foundational wellness, that's where all of that stuff, getting good quality sleep. And when we can get our body generating more energy, and we can always start there with the breath, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. And this is totally free. You have access to it like
yeah. Does
24/7.
it right. And you can do it anywhere. You could do it while driving a car, while driving your kids to practice, to while doing all of these things. You can breathe deeply while you're living life, right? Like
Right. Just
so
don't do the
so
hand on the heart and the hand on the chest while you're, supposed
while
to
you're
get
driving, right?
90 feet or whatever it is nowadays. Okay,
Right.
got it.
But we're just going to start off here, but I'm going to show you without the hands and the heart so you can do it while you're driving, right? But it's just so
Yeah.
that you're getting biofeedback. That's the key, right? Like, so when you inhale, you can just gently, just close your eyes for a second, not if you're driving, that is. And I just want you to breathe in and out through the nostrils. And I want you to feel your belly and your chest move. And then just take a few moments just to feel the wave of breath. And then on your next inhale, see if you can fill up your belly just a little bit more. Feel your chest lift. Feel your lungs inflate. And then as you exhale, you're going to feel the lungs deflate, the chest kind of moving back down into the body, and then the belly releasing. So as you inhale, filling up belly, lungs, and chest. And then exhale, chest, lungs, and belly. Remember, in and out through the nostrils. If you have allergies, right, like you can open your mouth a little bit, but try as best as possible in and out through the nostrils. So inhale, filling up the belly, lungs, and chest. And then exhale, release chest, lungs, and belly. Do one more deep breath in, like that. And then as you exhale, just let your hands kind of rest in your lap. Keep your eyes closed. And I want you to still continue to breathe deeply, but start to scan your body and notice any messages your body is trying to tell you. Are you holding your tension in a certain spot? Do you feel your emotions rising up someplace? What are the physical sensations that you're noticing right now? And just take a moment to get present right here and now. Just take maybe 2 or 3 more deep breaths. And then notice how you feel. Notice any shifts, right? We did that for just a couple of moments, but notice the impact that just a couple of moments of pausing and focusing on the breath and even deepening the breath can have on you. And then when you feel ready, just, crack your eyes open so that you can bring in the rest of the room. So Jackie, I saw it.
Yeah,
What did you notice?
so cool because I have an exciting day ahead of me, right? It started this morning with a client already. Now I'm in this interview with you, and I've got 4 more events or meetings after this. And so there's tension with that. It's excitable tension. I mean, it's not like it's stress and bringing me down, but it's like there's a lot on my plate today. And so I didn't realize though, I'm like all geared up, I'm ready to go. But just doing that, I could tell already how I could feel it go down through my hips, into my knees. I stretched my legs out. And then I could just kind of feel the tension in my shoulders and just kind of all wash away. I feel like I need to take my little footy slippers off that I have on right now to just like let it all go out through my toes, right? But that was just really relieving almost. Like, chill out, Jax. It's all good. You got this.
Well, right, and 100%, right? So just that simple focusing on the breath just relaxes the muscles. Now, I want to put like the idea of yoga and deep breathing doesn't need that you need to move like a turtle, right? Right? Like it doesn't mean that you need to move slow. We want to be energized. We want that excitement in our life, but we can do it without the tension, right? my favorite example of that is have you ever watched Usain Bolt run? Like he's like the fastest guy like I think on the planet. And he runs. The energy that it takes for him to do what he does is absolutely incredible. But when you watch him, it looks like he's just floating because he's active, but without the tension, right? When we can learn to, as a parent, you need to be on point. You need to be on point for your kids, but you can do it without the tension, without the holding, without the constriction, so that you can move fast, but move fluidly as well.
That's so cool. And it doesn't mean, again, that we have to shield our kids from our own grief. If when we're
No.
sad, when a big feeling comes up, when something happens, we can share that. Like what are some ideas or suggestions for parents when they are feeling it and they normally would try to brush away the tears or change the subject or kind of, distract from it. What else can they do?
There is a very fine line, right, between sharing and oversharing, like as a parent, right? So we need to be careful that you don't block and wall it off. Like I very rarely see my dad cry, especially as a man going through grief, right? We do go through grief a little bit differently than women. It's a different thing. But we also want to find that thing where we're actually it's okay to cry. It's okay for your kids to see you emotional because then that gives them permission to be emotional as well. You can say to your kids as much as you want, oh, you can come to me and tell me everything, right? But are you being that model for them? Like, not that you tell them everything, but are you communicating your needs and being honest with with your needs as they are, right? Like if you need a couple of minutes to, go and cry, let your kids know, hey, mommy needs a little bit of a timeout. I need to go in my room. I have to go cry. I'm feeling sad, right? And giving yourself the space to do that and not lean on your children to be the support. They still need to be kids. They still need to be the kids. And they need to know that it's okay that you need a break. It's okay for them to know that you're feeling frustrated or angry. And when you fly off the handle, they need that you apologize to them for that, right? Like they need to hear that we're all human beings. You're not a superhero as much as you want to be one. They need to see that human part of yourself.
Right. Not so much about being a perfect parent, just a conscious one. And sometimes
Yep.
we're triggered or we're set off by something. And in
Right.
the moment we're not going to be able to use our great parenting skills. But I love that then after the fact you can go back over and say, hey, and just describe to them what happened for you. And then
Right.
use my make it right technique that I
Right.
promote all over the place. If you don't know about the make it right technique, message me, I'll DM it to you. But it's really about not just saying I'm sorry or apologizing, but I had this moment, I did this thing, and what can I do to make it up to you? It makes you human in your kids' eyes, and it's really good modeling too.
Yeah, and when you get triggered, like having that pause moment of like, all right, focusing on the breath, like because sometimes we don't know, like as we were talking about, the parents don't know what they need, and so taking a moment to figure that out, like to take the beat, to take a couple of deep breaths, like we just did, and say, okay, right, this is what I need. And then I could communicate that more effectively with my children without being in a reactive spot. We always need, like when I work with clients, I always teach these reactive tools of grief of when the grief comes and smashes you in the face. Like we need to be able to deal with that, but also proactive tools of what can I do on a daily basis to keep my body vital, to keep my energy high, to keep me in a resourceful place so that this way when the kids start whining, when the problems start happening, if you're already in a non-resourced place to start, you're just going to fly off the handle. But if you're resourceful to start, then it's easier to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's really good. And it's good to do this more than once a day. It's good to I like to do it during transitions,
Yeah.
whether it's when I first wake up to do some kind of calming breath work and
Yep.
before I go to bed, do some calming breath work, but also in the car, parents, before you walk in the door, before you go to pick your kid up from daycare or school, or while you're waiting for them to come out, I mean, it takes just a couple of minutes. And even
Right.
if you just have 30 seconds, right? Take, 3 good breaths. But before you walk into the door, before your kids come into the door, because again, like you're saying, if you've got other things weighing on you and your body's already tense, and then the kids come in and there's more tension added, or even excitability, it's just like overwhelming,
Yeah.
to be dealing with at the time, whatever it is, it's really good to be grounding. And your kids notice you do it. Parents will
Right.
say, well, that looks weird or awkward to do that. I'm like, you're teaching them. And talk to my clients. Their kids are doing it because the parents are modeling it. And then
Yeah.
their kids are starting to do it when they're getting amped up or anxious about something or having some kind of a big feeling. So it's a really good free tool
Yeah,
to do
and
that.
also like sometimes that discharge doesn't always have to be like we don't have to sit and meditate necessarily,
Right.
right? Like do a 3 minute dance break. Get the kids involved, right? The kids come in from school, say, "Hey, 3 minute dance break," and get your body just like rocking and rolling, right? Like you can just movement in and of itself. So even when I work with clients, I don't necessarily focus on yoga postures. I work on some practical movements. Go out for a walk, go do a dance break, go, even if for guys, if it's chopping wood, some days I'll just be like, you know what? I just need to chop some wood just to get some of that, like that aggressive energy out there. Doesn't always have to be like, I'm going to sit and hum and,
Yeah.
like it doesn't have to always be calm. It can be active. And for some people, we need to get that action, that active energy out because it gets stuck if we don't.
That's a really good point. And sometimes people will say it's too hard for me emotionally to do the calming stuff because it freaks me out and it takes me to a really dark place. And so if that's the stage or the phase you're in with grief, well, I don't know if there's stages and phases, but if that's the
Yeah.
place that you're at, right? Because it kind of comes, it can come and go. Maybe it is being more active that's more important to you, so you can get it out. You
Yeah.
physically kind of get it out. So I think that's a really good point too.
Well, and I want to just address like, I don't believe in stages of grief. I believe in frameworks. So I have a very specific framework that I work with my clients. First is like building that awareness of like, okay, where are you right now? That's like kind of and it's not linear. This another kind of area is getting yourself into a peak state, because what happens, especially in grief, we can really take that victim mentality and getting your body into a very strong and vital place. You move your body, you change your feelings. You move your body, you change how you think. And so using a physiology approach to get yourself out of that like victim mindset and back into an empowered state. And then we work on changing your identity and finding a compelling future. Because I know with a lot of grief clients, their identity completely shifts or almost disintegrates, and they don't have a compelling future anymore because they can't have they don't have a vision of where their life is going because of the person that they lost was integrated into their vision, and now that person's no longer there. So I think a framework is way more effective than stages, because I don't believe it happens in stages. So
Absolutely love that. I remember when my mom passed, it's been over 20 years since she's been gone, but I remember people were saying, "Oh, have you been through the anger stage yet?" And I was like,
yeah,
am I
yeah,
supposed to? Like, is there something
yeah.
with me that I don't have that yet? So I love that you have a framework versus a stage work,
Yeah.
right?
And the thing too, I just wanted to address one more little thing is, right, that's why it's important to work on the body, the somatic component to it, right? Because even though your mom died 20 years ago, if you've only worked on it, and most traditional therapists work with the thinking patterns and the emotions behind it, and don't get the body involved. And if you don't get the body involved, that's like a third that you're missing. And so I find even too, some people, oh, well, I did my grief work with the therapist and they did the thought patterning and the emotional, but it still lives in the body if you don't release it from the tissues. So yeah.
What are some ways, do you know, I mean, maybe this is a silly question, but how do we know it's still harbored in our body? Are there things that is it because all of a sudden we have, digestive issues or, you
Well, so,
know,
yeah, some of the, like, if your body is not experiencing vitality, right? Like if you're tired and you're exhausted, and it could be grief, but it could be other life issues, right? Like uh, like grief is just one area. And when we put it in the context of everything else, usually, what we mentioned earlier, when we condition ourselves, or when you're being conditioned by your parents, by society, by everything else, right? That conditioning gets lodged in your nervous system, and you can rewire yourself, like by moving, by challenging your thoughts, by being aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. So we can rewire everything around. So there is a good chance that I believe everything gets sort of stuck within the body until we rewire it. And so that rewiring system, it does take about 60 to 90 days of consistent work and consistent effort just to get you thinking in a different way, to feeling in a different way, and to doing different things.
So good. And I think a lot of times when we even hear the word grief, we're thinking it has to be like a death of a loved one, but that grief is so much more than that. And I specialize in kiddos with attachment issues, and oftentimes those kiddos don't have verbal memory of their grief because maybe the abuse or the neglect or the adoption or the medical pain, the hospitalization, or whatever happened before the age of 3. So they don't have verbal memory of the grief or loss that they endured early on. And I have parents I'm working with who had those issues or those traumas as young children, and who are now parenting their own children, and some of those emotions and things, traumas and triggers and things are coming out in them now. And so again, the importance of being able to understand and recognize you could have had grief and loss, suffered grief and loss that never was, you don't remember, right? Verbally remember, but it's still harbored in your body. And it's coming out now.
And grief can come from many different ways. And I don't think we have expansive enough language around grief, to be honest with you, right? Because the death of a loved one is definitely a certain type of grief. And then there's others, like secondary types of grief, like there's like from divorce, from loss of a job, there's so many different non-death related grief. And they're similar in some ways, but very different in others. So I don't think the language is broad enough to really talk about those. But yes, there are absolutely other ways in which people grieve other than the death of a person. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So before we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about your practice, what you're doing with somatic grief therapy. And the website is somaticgrieftherapy.com. But talk about, you have a support group, you have specifically for sibling loss. And then you also have your somatic grief therapy work. So share how this works.
So I have a whole bunch of different things. So the first one is the free peer support group. That's specifically for bereaved siblings. Growing up with, being a young adult as a bereaved sibling, I realized that voice doesn't get validated enough. We always get invalidated by being strong for our parents, and just like all the stuff I mentioned a little bit earlier. So I'm really, and that's why I'm very adamant about telling my story so that other bereaved siblings, and it doesn't matter what age. I lost my sister as a young adult, but whether it's an older adult, it doesn't matter. Like the bereaved sibling experience is very unique. And so I wanted to make sure that I'm always supporting my fellow bereaved siblings in the free peer support group. But then I have my own private work that I do one-on-one online, which is really reconditioning the nervous system, about putting that grief. A lot of times when someone experiences a loss, it becomes their entire identity. And I like to make sure that grief gets put into really the perspective of life, into the tapestry of life, so that it's part of who they are, but not all of who they are. So if they're a parent, a wife, a daughter, a son, whatever, right? Like all of those identities can exist at the same time, not just, hey, I'm grieving. And when you do that, then you can experience and recondition your nervous system to experience happiness and joy again. So that's really when I work with my clients. I really specifically focus on that, about getting vitality in their body with lifestyle changes like healthy diet, movement, sleep, all of those things, because those are all critical. If you're not, there's research is showing, sorry, I'm going on a tangent, I realize.
You're good.
I could talk. If you're not sleeping well, right, that's going to affect your overall. They say it's even more important than diet and exercise. So getting good quality, consistent sleep is really the foundation, and then from there, diet, and then from there, movement, and then other self-care rituals. So I work with people all around that, so that this way they can really get back to taking action in their lives as quickly as possible.
It's so good. And it's a new approach. It's a different approach. Again, I'm
Yeah.
gonna suggest people go to your website, watch your keynote address that you gave. You have a video up there about that. You also have a book.
Yes. So the book that I have just came out in December. It's called Faces of Grief. And just like we talked, it's not just my story. I'm just one of the stories of the other 26 other authors in there. And we do talk about other forms of grief, not just death related grief, but there's ambiguous grief. There's divorce. There's all kinds of mental health, from mental health issues, incarceration. So there's all kinds of amazing stories in there of many, many, many different types of grief. And it actually brought awareness into my own. I thought, oh, grief is just death. But then once I started hearing other people's stories, I'm like, you know what? I got to let that stereotype drop and realize that it does extend into in other areas as well.
And is it too late? I mean, like for somebody like me that, my toughest loss, I would say I've experienced a lot of loss in my life. Uh, the hardest one for me so far to endure was the loss of my mom.
Right.
And again, therapy for that, lots of different approaches and things that I've done over the years. But I think there's people that have lost siblings or loved ones as a child, and now they're adults and they're still struggling. And
Listen, yeah. And it's never too late. As long as you're open to growth, as long as you have a growth mindset, right? You can rewire. If you have a fixed mindset and said, well, I experienced that death and that's it, boom, you're done, right? Then it's much harder. But you can always rewire your nervous system as long as you're breathing, as long as you wake up in the, like, I believe it doesn't matter how long. It may take a little bit longer to disconnect the old wiring and reconnect the new wiring, but it is definitely possible. As long as you're open to the growth, as long as you want to put the work in, as long as you're looking at changing the way you think, the way you feel, because, and then what you do, because nothing has meaning until we give it meaning. So we can change those meanings. We can always rewrite our story, as long as you're, wanting to rewrite it.
right, right. And you're in the Jersey area, but
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
virtual or
Yeah,
you're
all my work is online because, I love the format. I feel that like I just love working with people from all over the place, and and we literally have a session and then turn off the camera and and I always give homework in between sessions too, because what we need to be consistent in our actions and the way we think. And so it's not something you can, oh, I did it once and I'm good, right? It's like, no, we have to get it worked into our nervous system so that this way, every time like life punches us in the gut, we get back up, and we get back up quicker every time it does. So yeah, it's
so
never,
great.
yeah,
I wish I would have had you 20 some years ago, because
yeah,
I remember like the loss of my grandma, and my mom was really adamant that I needed to go get, some therapy. And so I did. I went, but third story or fifth story up in this bank building was a therapist's office, and I went in there and I'm crying and all the things, and all puffed up in the face, and then I've got to go back through the elevator, and then the main foyer of the bank building with all these people, and of course nobody's looking at me, but I'm thinking I'm embarrassed, and I'm thinking, so now
yeah,
it's like I'm add all this other stress onto the therapy session in and of itself. How cool is it now that
yeah.
we have that ability to meet
Well,
virtually in the comfort of our own home, where we feel more
mm,
safe and secure,
yep.
and do do a coaching session with you. So
Yeah. Well, I wish I had me 25 years ago. That's why I got involved, because I was like, oh, wait a second. Nobody's talking like now people are now throwing the word somatic around, but they're just using it usually in reference to movement. When I say somatic, in my opinion, it's not, movement is part of that, but it's all the other stuff around it. It's like eating, it's sleeping. It's like all of the things that get our body alive and vibrant and, wanting us to be able to crush the day.
That's so great. So great. And
Yeah.
you're going to talk about some foundational wellness, just as we are here at No Problem Parenting, going to be presenting some classes in the coming weeks. People follow you on
Yes.
Instagram or on TikTok at Somatic Grief Therapy. They can also listen to your Moving Grief podcast, right? Is there?
Yep, that's on YouTube. Yep, it's on YouTube. It's Moving Grief podcast. It's me and a colleague, Heather Stang. We have some great grief talks, and so we're like, hey, let's record them for other people. And so we are always giving tools and strategies, because that's really important to both of us, for people to walk away with something that they can use right now.
That's so great. So great. Well, thanks for bearing with me as we spontaneously went live on Facebook here today. I love everything you're about. You make grief normal. You make it safe to talk about and to share and to move forward and become victorious instead of stuck in our victim.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be heavy. Like that's what a lot of people. I mean, yes, it can get heavy for sure. Like but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. We just got to look at our own patterns and identify what those patterns are, so we can change them.
So great. All right. Well, we're going to put the links in the show notes of the podcast. I'll probably drop some in here on this Facebook Live. But otherwise, be sure to follow No Problem Parenting Podcast for episodes just like this and more. Parents, healing yourself is one of the greatest gifts you can give your children. And you don't have to get it all right, but you do have to start. So until next time, keep showing up for your kids, keep growing. And remember, this is one of my favorite quotes. Remember that on particularly rough days, when you feel as though you cannot possibly endure, remember that your track record for getting through those days so far is 100%. And I think that's pretty darn good. All right, parents, that's it for today. Make sure you head over to the website, noproblemparents.com. Sign up to get our emails. We're going to be giving away tips, tools, techniques, and resources, updates on podcast episodes, and more. Check out noproblemparents.com. For now, hugs and high fives. You got this.